Welcome to AP Critical Review. In this video, we're going to give you some important tips for crushing the free response section of any AP exam. Tip number 1. The free response section is timed, just like the multiple choice section. The first order of business is to gauge how much time you can spend on each question. You should allocate more time on the longer questions, which are generally worth more points. Check for a link to a PDF in the description section of this video. This PDF has information about the number of questions and suggested times for select STEM subjects. Time is tight, so it's vital that you pace yourself appropriately. Temper the recommendations given with the understanding that you will find some questions easier than others and will need less time on those than the questions you have trouble with. Tip number 2. Quickly read all free response questions to determine which ones you feel most prepared to answer and do them first. This will not only boost your confidence, but guarantee you have time to score well on these questions. However, there are some AP exams, AP Statistics with the investigative task is one of them, that has one or more questions worth a lot of points. Do not leave these for last when you're tired and running low on time. Tip number 3. It may seem obvious, but be sure to answer the question. If the question asks you to choose between two things, explain why you choose one thing and why you didn't choose the other thing. If the question asks you to compare two things, explain how they are alike and, if appropriate, how they are different. If the question asks you to draw something, draw it, and not just write a paragraph about it. Tip number 4. Organize your work as neatly as possible and clearly mark the answer. In addition, be sure to show all the steps you took to reach your answer. The free response section is human scored, and the grader's not a mind reader. You are often awarded credit for correct thinking, but only if the grader sees evidence of it in your answer. Tip number 5. Be succinct. More space is given for an answer than needed. You don't get extra points for a comprehensive response, and you generally do not have the time to write more than what is required to answer the question anyway. Tip number 6. Don't worry if you say something wrong in your answer. The free response section is scored on the basis of a rubric. The grader's looking for certain items to award points. Like the multiple choice section, there's no penalty for a wrong answer. Tip number 7. Do not contradict yourself. If you make a statement that would normally earn you points, but later retract the statement you made, you'll receive no credit. Obviously, you can't have it both ways. Tip number 8. For questions with multiple parts, be sure to answer all parts of the question. Multiple part questions generally proceed in a logical order, with the easiest or simplest sections first. Consequently, it's generally a good idea to answer each part in the order it appears. Tip number 9. If a question asks you to use results from a previous part, be sure to explicitly indicate when you are doing this. You can still get credit for later responses, even if you miss earlier ones that depend upon it. Simply explain what you would do if you knew the missing answer. Tip number 10. Be sure to indicate the appropriate units for any numerical answer and be cognizant of significant figures. Do not round off intermediate answers, since doing so will create a cumulative rounding error. Tip number 11. When using a calculator to obtain answers, show the equations underlying the calculation and not just the sequence of buttons you are pressing on the calculator. Tip number 12. While you should strive for succinct answers, do not fail to provide explanations and conclusions in the context of the question. Many questions will often require that you use various pieces of data from the questions and equations to arrive at an answer. Don't just plug and chug equations. Be sure to relate the answers you obtain back to the questions asked. Thanks for watching.